Radiation is a major debate in the medical community right now. Could your smartphone cause cancer in kids? Some experts say no, but others claim smartphones are the tobacco and asbestos of our future, and it's your children who may be at most at risk. Dr. Lisa Thornton is a pediatrician and the medical director of pediatric and adolescent rehabilitation at the Kids Rehab in Chicago. She says our children are in danger. So, Dr. Thornton, which devices have you concerned?
Well, all devices that emit a cell signal or a Wi-Fi signal. So not just the smartphones, but also your computer, these game systems, all of them emit Wi-Fi and emit electromagnetic radiation.
And what is it about these devices that makes you concerned they might cause cancer or other illnesses?
Well, there is some suggestion that the electromagnetic rays cause certain kinds of brain cancers in adults. And children's brains are much more active and metabolically, the skull is thinner, the head is smaller, so I'm concerned that these rays may be causing some troubles.
So I was curious. I don't know how many kids have devices, so we put a survey out with DrOz.com, and we asked how many wireless devices your children had. Listen carefully, 65% of you, 2/3 of you said 2 or more. Dr. Thornton, does that surprise you?
It doesn't. I have a 13-year-old, and her and her friends all have probably 2 devices each. And the problem is that not only they're holding these phones up to their ears, but they're also putting a lot of things in their laps, which is close to reproductive organs.
So who regulates how much radiation is emitted from smartphones and these little games and devices and et cetera?
The FCC regulates the amount of radiation that these can emit. And so there is some regulation. The problem is that the intensity of usage has gone up over the years, so there's a lot more of these devices being used, and the studies were not done in children.
So how do you know, if you're a parent, how do you know what the safe amount is?
Well, you don't know what the safe amount is, and that's the concern. Me as a parent and a pediatrician, I'm very worried about what is the safe amount. I don't know, and as you know, with radiation, the effects can take 10, 20, even 30 years before we see the actual health effects.
So I looked at a lot of the data, everybody, because I've been curious about this topic, and I got to say, many of the studies, the ones that we have available in adults, don't seem to raise that much of an alarm, but I look at major organizations. For example, the electromagnetic fields produced by the mobile phones Dr. Thornton's mentioning about, they're classified by the World Health Organization as possibly carcinogenic to humans. So I started thinking, why was that? Why are they cautious? Why are they worried? And then I found out maybe why. A recent study reported that parts of a child's growing body can absorb up to 10 times the radiation that an adult body would absorb. See the difference? Same cell phone. Not much penetration here. You're over halfway through the brain with the energy that's coming from that cell phone in this child's brain. Now, this child's brain is also, because a young kid, is dividing faster, and they're developing. That leaves them more vulnerable. So then take a look at a 5-year-old, because now we know 5-year-olds have these. I mean, goodness, it's gone from halfway to pretty much dominating the space of the brain. So the question is, since it's going in there deeper, since there's more happening in the brain of a child, since the child is at risk for developmental issues that we may not even know about, difficult to predict, it becomes a big question mark. Not an accusation that there's a problem, but a thought that maybe we should have, at least in our minds, a concern about this process. So Dr. Thornton, what do we know about the effects of this radiation on the body?
Well, we don't know much. Again, there are these suggestions that there may be problems, but there was one study that suggested even attention deficit hyperactivity disorder may be attributable to some of this absorption, but much more study is needed.
The government, device manufacturers, how do they make us aware of these, I think, understandable concerns parents might have?
Well, you know, it's interesting. The device manufacturers, if you read your instruction manual, actually do have distance recommendations. So many of them will say, you know, hold this at least an inch away from your body to limit the amount of radiation exposure.
So, I need to have some advice here. What would you tell all the parents out there? Listen, I know my kids aren't throwing away their smartphones. All these devices are going to be part of our life in probably growing amounts. What would you do?
Well, when it comes to radiation, distance matters. So keep these as far away from your child's body as possible. Use a wired headset. Remember that the wireless headset is emitting a Wi-Fi, so that's giving you radiation as well. Use the speakerphone. Use the text feature. If you're not going to use the phone, put it into airplane mode. Don't sleep with your phone next to your head under your pillow. Teenage girls, don't stick them in your bras, which a lot of girls have a tendency to do.
So I reached out to the CTIA, that's the Wireless Association, and I asked about the possible carcinogenic effects of smartphones, and they were pretty clear on this. They said, in part, the peer-reviewed scientific evidence has overwhelmingly indicated that wireless devices do not pose a public health risk for adults or children. In addition, there's no known mechanism for microwave energy within the limits established by the FCC to cause any adverse health effects. And I've got to say, I understand their position. I looked at these manuscripts. we're asking a question about kids where there's not as much comfort, at least in my heart. No one knows the long-term effects of all these new technologies in kids, but we know the government's limit was not conceived with kids in mind. I know my kids aren't giving up their devices, but I think, Dr. Thornton, your advice is very sensible, and we're going to take advantage of it.